Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Monday. It is May the 19th, and we have got some real interesting work in front of you. Cleaned up the beard because it is summertime. It's hot outside. It's time to get clean. It's time to get fast. And what a wild weekend full of information and news and things that I didn't expect to find out. We got Joe Biden. He's got cancer right on the wake of finding out that he was at least as bad, if not worse, than we thought. With the Hur investigation, the tapes were released to Axios. That's troubling. Also interesting that they went to a friendly media source, so they were able to deflect. Talk about cancer. So that's the big story, that Joe Biden is dying. We knew that because we listened to him talk. He was barely alive when he was there. We've also got a story about a Mexican Navy ship. Apparently they were doing training and decided to attack the Brooklyn Bridge. The Brooklyn Bridge won and several people died. That's not good. So we'll talk a little bit about that. There was an explosion that happened in Palm Beach that the FBI was able to determine was terrorism right away. Unlike the pipe bomber case, which is still outstanding and ongoing. No big deal there. I'm sure we'll find out transparency. That's why Dan and Kash sat down and did a 30-minute interview with Maria Bartiromo. Great stuff. What else? Let's see here. A couple other little interesting stories. But what we're going to do today is we're going to live cut good chunks of that 30-minute interview because many of you are not going to sit and listen to it. I'll tell you, the news is not good, and I'm going to tell you the exact moment when the fight for the FBI was lost. I'll tell you when the beginning shot was fired, and it looked like we were losing, and then I'll tell you exactly when it was done, when it was all over but the crying. So that's my take, and it's not great. It's not a great way to start off on a Monday, but it is the way that we're going to do it. Before we get started, let me remind you that cyber criminals and scammers are always interested in trying to screw you over, and they will do everything they can to get access to you. If you want to take your name out of the files that they can use to come and get you, go to patriot-protect.com/KYLE. Again, patriot-protect.com/Kyle. You guys will find out that there are all kinds of cyber threats that exist in the world. Don't expect the federal government to save you from them. China's got AI data scraping companies, ones like DeepSeek and probably some that you don't even know of. They are constantly looking to exploit breaches in our governmental system, in our private industry, dumping millions of highly sensitive information out there. Americans can find that their information has been leaked on the dark web and then bought up by cyber criminals. They'll use your name, your email address, your relatives' names, your addresses you've worked at, places you've lived, other personal data, including drug test results. They will target you with information that they should not know by either pretending to be you and then opening up lines of credit or things like that, or pretending that they know you because they are representing a legitimate company and trying to take sensitive data that will allow you to be compromised. We're not talking about password leaks here, people. We're talking about sophisticated criminals attempting to impersonate you, hijack your accounts, destroy your finances, or worse. If you've never seen the movie The Beekeeper, check it out. Jason Statham does a pretty good job of showing how pissed off you might be. Check out patriot-protect.com/KYLE. You guys can sign up. You get 15% off with my name as KYLE. That's the promo code, and it costs less than keeping your porch light on at night. Don't be the next victim. Sign up today. Let's get started with today's information. And also, if you guys are ever looking for any of our sponsors, the links are in the show description in the order, generally speaking, that we mentioned them. All right, a lot to cover today, so let's jump right in. All right, so Joe Biden has cancer, and I guess it's about as interesting as you'd expect. He's in his 80s. Nobody thought he was healthy. Nobody thought he was doing well. He actually mentioned that he had cancer back in 2022. None of that's particularly interesting. It is interesting that the media decided to run all these aggressive forms of cover. So let's just go to a video clip of them talking about how it's totally normal for people to fall. Young people, vigorous people, virile people, people like yourself. You're just walking around every once in a while, you fall. It's so shocking to just fall, but everybody does it. That's why it's totally normal for the president to fall down on stairs and a sandbag, and when the wind hits him, and walking from Air Force One, and when he's just bumbling around looking for a parachutist and can't figure out which way the cameras are when he's doing a photo shoot shoot and everybody's looking one direction and he's looking the other. Let's talk about how totally normal it would be and why they totally were not covering up for the guy having cancer and dying while he was running for president. This is from 2023.
While I think the worst part of today for the president was the political optics, I don't think there's really any, this is not some sort of ominous talisman about his medical condition.
I fell in the hallway because I was wearing high heels and walking too fast recently. Well, it was actually about 3 years ago now, come to think of it. And it's so startling as an adult when you fall. It just it knocks the wind out of you. And it's so, you can't believe that you just fell. And he got up a lot faster than I did. Are you encouraged that you saw him back at the White House looking pretty spry?
Yeah. Look, otherwise the president, appears to be in pretty good physical condition. I'll note that even more startling this week, Bruce Springsteen took a fall on stage, and he was on his back for quite a bit longer than the president today.
That is excellent context.
That is such good context because Bruce Springsteen, a man who was only a few years younger than Joe Biden, when he fell down, by the way, he fell down and laid there and played it up because he had a guitar on him. And he was like, I fell down in front of a stage. How silly is this? And then he got up under his own power. Joe Biden, obviously a totally different animal. But yeah, it's very good context there from the totally not lying scumbags over at CNN. What about MSNBC? We could trust them to give us the right news, correct? This is coming from 2024. How fun is this? Ready, go.
So a couple of things. One, I agree the media is not fair. We should accept that, and we shouldn't hand-wring. I do think, though, as you noted in your monologue, what Sinclair is doing is particularly insidious, and that won't just be resolved by Joe Biden being out there more often, because you have sort of a right-wing propaganda operation that is willing to go even further than Fox News, that they've done that in the past. And they're doing it under the imprimatur of a lot of banners, trusted sources, CBS, NBC, ABC. And that then gets into the bigger thing of how do you deal with a guy like Donald Trump? And my honest hunch is that most of the media, most of the reporters and people talking about him, covering him, have not watched a full speech in years. And the reason it's important and significant is because they'll see just how much he's declined. If we're going to cover this honestly, we, one, need the people covering it to actually force themselves to sit through a full speech, just to get a sense of how much it changed. Because the downstream effects of that is you would not see as much hand-wringing in mainstream media and mainstream reporting about the discrepancies between Joe Biden and Donald Trump's, mental acuity once somebody actually saw what the current state of Donald Trump really is. Not the
Yeah. Obviously, the true state of Donald Trump is that he was completely off his rocker. He was barely hanging on to life. That's why he had like a 39-hour marathon session when he was celebrating the inauguration in January, right? He sat down, he stood up, he was there forever. He had an entire parade go on indoors, and then he went and sat down and did like 11 hours of signing a bunch of executive orders to set the record for the most executive orders in 5 minutes. How badly did these people, you wonder if they actually believed in some of this themselves. I suspect some of them did. So let's go to some of this right-wing media propaganda that's out there. Here's CBS News, known for their aggressive and ridiculous right-wing reporting. This says former President Joe Biden has been diagnosed with a quote-unquote aggressive form of cancer that nobody saw, even though he was the president and he had the best medical coverage in the world. It's a form of prostate cancer that has already spread to his bones. I've read various different oncologists already saying it would take multiple years for this to be the case. There's no chance that someone with the amount of medical coverage that he had didn't reference this. So that makes you wonder, how many other people are lying? I think it actually gets to the danger of the auto pen and who was running the auto pen, who was in charge of what was going on out there. Of course, all of this stuff takes away from what was really going on, which is that Axios obtained the Biden-Hur interviews, Robert Hur famously interviewing Joe Biden, asking him about classified documents, the thing they decided not to prosecute him because he was too old, too senile, and too infirmed to actually stand trial. They thought he would look as a kindly, elderly old man who was confused and befuddled by basic facts. Biden shared that cancer touches us all, even though he apparently was going to cure cancer. I guess he didn't get to that, like he didn't get to so many other things. He said, like so many of you, Jill and I have learned that we are strongest in the broken places. Thank you for lifting us up with love and support. I'm going to just be totally clear. I don't care about Joe Biden having cancer. He was not long for this world based on any other objectively, easily identifiable, physically observable observations. Just watching him walk around, you knew that he wasn't long for the world. He's febrile. He was stuttering and mumbling and confused, and he was barely there, and he zoned out, and there wasn't a lot of time left for Joe Biden anyway. And I don't really care that he has cancer. He did a lot of really awful things. He probably forced a lot of people to get a shot, and it seems like that shot also caused cancer. I don't have the evidence, and neither do you, but there's some pretty compelling correlation with some of the completely insane things that have happened in our population set. And I'm going to show you a real whistleblower from the DOD talking about that stuff. Joe Biden was not a decent person. He was a fake Catholic who claimed that abortion was acceptable, and he championed it. So I don't care what happened to him. And I know that's not the nicest thing in the world, but I care about a lot of other people. And I don't have time to care about Joe Biden, someone who said some of the ugliest and nastiest things, stuff like this that I don't easily forget. Here's a little mixture of Democrats and Joe Biden and others just being nasty and ugly.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
I'd like to punch him in the face.
I said if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
Punch some people in the face!
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump, and that's a fact.
Look as his character is stabbed to death.
Where is John Wilkes Booth when you need him?
That's it right there.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country. Maybe there will be.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
You know, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Yeah, it actually says it right there in the Constitution. No big deal. So Joe Biden, aggressive form of cancer. At the end of the day, I say good riddance. Good luck with your cancer treatment. I don't care what happens. I don't want to hear much more about it. I do think it's quite interesting, though, that they have decided to release these tapes, and then the cancer announcement came shortly thereafter. The tapes, this is Tim Pool talking about it. The claim is that it's somehow worse and that everybody missed the story. That's not the case. I think anybody who listened to it realized at the time how absurd and ridiculous it was that this guy was able to run for president, but wasn't competent enough to sit and stand trial. I've got a little bit of those tapes as well because I want to cover those in the first half of the show. Here's Tim Pool talking about it, wearing his beanie and a hoodie on Fox News with Jesse Waters. It is a weird look, whether it's your signature thing or not. It's not a great signature that you can't switch up when you go out on Fox News. Just saying.
So now is it clear why they withheld this audio?
Yes, I think it was clear to us the whole time. I think it's fascinating that the narrative they're trying to run now is we missed the story. We just were completely unaware this thing had been happening. You know what I'm thinking the whole time we're playing these clips is there are a lot of liberal news institutions, powerful newspapers that like to refer to someone like me as conservative simply for noticing that the sitting president was infirm. He was incapable of doing his job. When they released the transcript, immediately, anybody who's rational says, let's hear the tape. I mean, you're saying we're not going to prosecute this guy while claiming Donald Trump did the same thing but should be prosecuted. We want to hear what happened and why. And they withhold it. Now they have the nerve to come out and claim, you know, is it the White House Correspondents' Dinner or whatever? Oh, whoopsie. We just missed this one the whole time. I don't understand how regular people sitting at home saw this happen and these journalists claim they had no idea what was going on.
So none of that is reasonable. Nobody believes that's the case. Of course, it was obvious to those of us who have been watching that it was ridiculous, that the guy was completely out to lunch. And here is some of what it sounded like. This is actually what the transcript sounded like in my head because I can do a good mental impression of Joe Biden, who is confused and stumbling and bumbling, the human Roomba, as Steve Friend calls him. Here's the Axios, or at least a little piece of the Axios clip. You guys can find the entirety if you want out there. They've published them all out there over on YouTube at this point. Miranda Devine has some very good takes on them, which I think this is a bigger scandal than anyone wants to let know. And again, who was running the country when this guy was answering questions like this?
So during this time, we were living in Chambers Road, and there were documents related to the Penn Biden Center or the Biden or the cancer focus shot or your book. Where did you keep papers that related to those things that you were actively working on?
Well, I don't know. This is what, 2017, 18, that area?
Yes, sir.
Remember, in this time frame, my son is either been deployed or is dying. And so it was, and by the way, there were still a lot of people at the time when I got out of the Senate that were encouraging me to run in this period, except the president. They're not a mean thing to say. I mean, he just thought that she had a better shot of winning the presidency than I did. And so I hadn't at this point, even though I'm at Penn, I hadn't walked away from the idea that I might run for office again. So if I ran again, I'd be running for president. And so what was happening though, what month did Bo die? May 30th, 2015 he died.
In that clip, he's talking about 2017, 2018. That's about the time that Bo, his son, who died in 2015, was deployed. He's off by several years. He doesn't understand what's going on. He has no context for the time that he's discussing. And throughout the interview, he essentially, like, any moment that they get close to asking him a real question, he deflects. He does the Joe Biden, like he goes on some tangent and then goes, well, but anyway, he's all over the map. Which tells you that somebody else was probably running this country. That seems like fairly important. The good news is that the folks that are in Congress, the serious investigators at the FBI, are going to find out what that's all about. They're going to go and apply all the resources in the executive branch to police the executive branch, right? No, we're going to have members of the legislative branch do hearings that have absolutely no legal authority. They're probably going to send some very strongly worded letters. You're probably going to see some people with some subpoenas that they may or may not decide to comply with. Here's Jim Comer, House Oversight. They're going to get to the bottom of this, and everything that you hope is going to happen is, no, it's not going to happen. I don't think.
You are going and looking at who is controlling this auto pen, because Joe Biden, I mean, he's demonstrating that he doesn't have all the cognitive capabilities they had. That interview was from 2023.
Yeah, that's hard evidence. Early in the President Biden's term as president, it clearly shows that he was in significant mental decline. It questions who was actually making the decisions. So what we found is not just with the pardons he issued, but many of the executive orders that the courts are now using to Trump-proof many of the executive orders that President Trump is trying to implement to make government more efficient. Many of these executive orders, as well as the pardons of Biden's entire family as a result of our investigation, these were all signed with the auto pen. And clearly from that interview, which was many, many months prior to the heavy use of the auto pen, Joe Biden wasn't capable of making decisions. He wasn't coherent. We think we've identified who the staffers are. Jason, you all have done great work with that over at Heritage Oversight. We're going to bring everyone that we believe was involved in any role in the use of the auto pen. We're going to invite them to come in for a transcribed interview. If they want, then they will receive a subpoena and they will have a full-blown deposition. But we want...
Hooray, hooray, more letters and more depositions. That's what it is. How about you guys depose some whistleblowers and find out what went wrong when that guy was out there theoretically not running the country? How about the folks that were actually out there being taken advantage of? Because what I don't see is a correction of the problem outside of the Treasury Department. The people that were whistleblowers within DHS, within DOJ, within DOD, have they really been brought back in any meaningful way? Have they been moved into the positions where they can actually help do the oversight that you guys are talking about? Or has this all been lip service? Because it seems like lip service to me. Here's Doc Pete Chambers, who we'll get on the show at some point in time. The small individual conversations I've had with this man have been very encouraging. He just seems like such a straight shooter. He's exactly what you think an SF guy is supposed to look like, by the way. Even as an officer, even as a doctor, he's got the stash, he's got the persona. And he's talking about data, you know, like facts, the things that could actually be prosecuted and could actually be run down and proven, the malfeasance that was going on instead of talking in platitudes. Here's a little taste of what they were talking about. DMED data. This is something that that Ted Macy's also brought up. This is not something that just like happened and no one's heard of it. It's just inconvenient because what it would do is mean that you have to actually take some action and fix real problems that were actually created during those 4 years under Biden.
My name is Pete Constantine Chambers, retired Lieutenant Colonel, United States Army Special Operations. I was also a flight surgeon with the United States Army Green Berets. When I lost the ability to go to my command, I went to a congressman. I went to 2 congressmen. I went to 3. Nobody wanted to talk about it. until finally Senator Johnson came forward and said, I'm looking for whistleblowers. And I had been talking to Dr. Teresa Long, a lieutenant colonel, flight surgeon out of Fort Rucker, Alabama, and she said, look at the DMED data, Defense Medical Epidemiology Database. Look at that data. I pulled up the DMED data and went, whoa, neurologic events up 1,100% since the shots rolled out, 11x rise.
I got contacted by attorney Tom Renz over the weekend. He showed me the data that is being extracted from, what is the name of this database?
DMED. It's the Defense Medical Database.
They have noticed a very alarming increase in instances of certain conditions compared to a 5-year average.
Senator Johnson, to the camera, he says,
the Department of Defense, the Biden administration is on notice. They must preserve these records, and this must be investigated.
Less than 24 hours, the system went down. We couldn't get on. We couldn't find anything. We couldn't do anything. About 48 hours later, it came back up.
The database was frozen by the DoD. And then the next week, all of a sudden, all the previous 5 years' number came up.
What they did was they took this data that went up 1,100%, and they just brought all this data up like this, to match. So it looked like there was no real change.
They thought they pulled one over on us. They didn't.
Okay, so all of these databases should have been archived. The fact that they brought it out in a hearing, fantastic. Great, you did the hearing. Then what? Where's the follow-up? All of this stuff was wrongdoing, and there's been no change in it. There's been almost like no movement in this space. I don't understand how anybody can go out there and think that we are going to correct this problem without actually going back and visiting all of the work that was already done. And a lot of it was already done. The heavy lifting was done by whistleblowers. The reason that you know, not just that something was wrong, because everybody had that instinct over those 4 years. Everybody knew the concrete things that were in fact wrong because whistleblowers came forward, torched their careers, torched their anonymity, torched their lifetime of not going out and seeking spotlight or public sector acknowledgement. It is my position that no one has done more to make FBI whistleblowers more in the public eye than myself and the Suspendables. No one. There have been FBI whistleblowers going back to the beginning, but no one knew who they were in the same way because none of them took the torch to the FBI and their careers permanently the way that I did and Steve Friend did and Garrett O'Boyle did and Marcus Allen did, the way that we went forward and went into media, which was not previously done before, and made it known. But I can tell you this, because of the way that things have been going on for the last, let's say 2 years, but more importantly, over the last 4 months that we've been watching, we may not have been the first by a long shot, but I expect that we will be the last honest operators in this space. From here on out, the only people you're going to get are the same ones that went after Donald Trump. They're going to be partisan. They're going to say, well, we're mad at Kash Patel, so we're going to call out things that bother us for our side. But they're not going to do it because they care about the Constitution the way that people like Doc Chambers did. That's my promise to you. We're going to move forward to hit a couple other high point stories, and then we're going to get into a long version of cutting and pasting an interview. Before we do that, you can tell I'm a little bit riled up today. I did have a full couple cups of my friend's Blackout coffee over here. This is we're bowling out of the 5-pound bag. I still haven't gone through my first one yet, and we've had guests and family members, so check them out. It's blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. We've been telling you about Blackout Coffee for a couple of months. If you haven't tried it yet, we'll break it down. It's not just another coffee brand. They are built on hard work and grit and American values, the things that mean a lot here, the same way that we are self-built. They started off in a garage, and they made themselves into a 64,000 square foot warehouse. I started off in a trailer, and now I'm sitting in what looks like a pretty professional set, even if it's just an extra bedroom in our house. They've been roasting all their beans in-house. They pack every single one of them. They employ over 30 hardworking Americans. They have no corporate nonsense, just damn good coffee made by people who actually give a damn. Isn't that something? Blackout Coffee, they're not about a great cup of coffee. They're also about supporting the American dream, and they built the company the right way with no shortcuts, no woke nonsense, no weak beans if you believe in hard work and values, and coffee that gets you moving the way that it gets me moving. If your brain is moving this quickly, as fast as my lips are moving, then you might want to check out blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. Use promo code Kyle. Save yourself 20%. Keep the American dream alive for this company and for yourself. Support real coffee. Drink Blackout. Again, it's blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. Don't drink weak coffee. Get your day started off the right way. We're going to keep getting into this. Let's talk about something some people who had their day start off the wrong way. I guess this was ending their day based on the twilight. Some Mexican ship decided to come in contact with the Brooklyn Bridge, and in the ship versus bridge, unlike the container ship that hit the pylon and took down a whole bridge, this time the bridge won. I guess that's the good news. The bad news is people died. 2 people died there, and 19 more were hospitalized, seriously injured, because if you notice those big sticks that stick out of this sort of pirate-looking ship, the central mast, when they impacted, they had people that were standing on them across the entire, whatever the heck it is that holds up those sails. I don't know what the cross beams are called. The cross sticks. I did read a really funny post by a former Army Ranger who was making fun of his lack of knowledge about boats because he's a land animal. Same thing here. What we know, 2 people were killed, at least 19 were injured. About 8:30 p.m. on Saturday night, several onlookers, they were like dozens and dozens of people that were enjoying one of the sunnier nights in New York City, and they witnessed a Mexican training vessel hit the bottom of the Brooklyn Bridge. Apparently, there was a 2-foot surge in height. That is not enough to account for what was going on with the bridge. They were in a section they shouldn't have been. It looks like they lost power, and they had a tugboat, and the tugboat detached, and they went backwards down the river and smashed right into it. And as I said, killed several, looked ridiculous, had this huge Mexican flag flying. The optics are absolutely abysmal for these people. This is 16 months after the collision in Baltimore at the Francis Scott Key Bridge, completely unrelated from what we can tell. Really sad stuff, honestly. Like, a horribly sad thing. It looked like people were standing up there in ceremonial costume. I think things like this are cool for people. They're great for kids to be able to go out and see it, and then to witness it make impact with a bridge and kill people in front of you. Pretty devastating. They said a total now of as many as 22 people were injured. 19 were taken to the hospital, several others. It looked catastrophic. There were bodies like flying off the scaffoldings. They were falling down into the water and onto the deck. The fact that anyone even survived from some of these falls, we're looking at like 10, 20, 30, 40 feet in the air, smashing into the Brooklyn Bridge. Devastating. There's all kinds of like horrible jokes that could be made about that. Maybe another time we'll do some puns about that. Right now, I think it's just sad. And I did have some footage of it, but I've got more stuff that we want to cover on. So we just touched that briefly. Another fun story is that there's a bunch of escaped convicts that were released in New Orleans, escaped. You see them running out of the jail. And luckily, the people that are in charge of them look like DEI hires. They look like the most ridiculous people you've ever seen. These are some of the inmates. There's one more. They look all the same. They all have the same haircut. They all have the same skin tone. They all have the same complexion. They were all imprisoned down there. They said that they are confident that they have actual intelligence on all of the fugitives, and we will track the 7 that are still remaining and bring them to justice. This was said by a guy named Colonel Robert Hodges, who is the superintendent of the Louisiana State Police. A total of 10 escaped. They caught 3. So that's about right. It's about right for what you'd expect in New Orleans. Just kind of keeping you guys up to date. Of course, they have gotten agents, officers, marshals, deputies, aircraft, drones from the FBI, the United States Marshal Service, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Why the hell not? They got the State Police, New Orleans PD, and the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office all involved, and they're offering as much as $20,000 per person to try to bring them back into custody. Okay, great stuff. And then lastly, kind of another little piece here that we'll touch on. They identified the subject, who actually seems to be deceased, as far as I can tell, in the deadly blast outside of the Palm Springs Fertility Clinic. The FBI doing quick work there and rounding up somebody who was already dead on scene. That's the favorite of the FBI because the scene is already done. Then they can do all the fun stuff like go to the laboratory, do post-blast analysis, try to figure out what the guy was about, and then not tell you anything about it. The primary subject in a fatal car bombing that occurred outside of a fertility clinic in Palm Springs, California, was identified by authorities. It said that he was actually killed in the explosion. The suspect was identified as 25-year-old Guy or Guy Edward Bartkus of 29 Palms, about 50 miles away from Palm Springs. I remember going to Palm Springs when I was a kid, doing like vacation stuff there. That's sort of pretty wild. That is a pretty good-sized bomb that took it down. He's believed to be the person that was found dead next to the detonated vehicle. I don't know if that was a mistake or intentional. Claimed that he was some sort of nihilistic guy. He had a nihilistic ideation, whatever that means. And he decided to attack the IVF facility. We're treating it as an intentional act of terrorism, but luckily they don't have to worry about it. They are combing through his writings, including what they described as a manifesto. Who is this guy Davis that they're quoting here? Is that the FBI guy that I saw? Davis is the assistant director in charge of the FBI's Los Angeles field office. Okay, so Akil Davis, I saw him speaking. Unimpressive, uninteresting. How interesting they were able to call it out as terrorism right away, though. And again, they were able to ID that this person was the one who did it immediately. You wonder how much of this was something like a playbook that they were encouraging and that got it out of hand. Of course, they wouldn't let you know about that. The blast shattered windows and scattered debris in all directions. They described it as a pretty decent-sized bomb. I think they said it was like 250 yards worth of debris. That's a good-sized explosion and scattered things all over the place. But due to the speed and the professionalism of the Palm Springs Fire Department, Station 1, Palm Springs Police Department, as well as FBI bomb technicians, said the FBI Assistant Special Agent in charge, they were able to save all the embryos in this facility, as if the FBI cares about the life of the preborn. How interesting. People understood the sensitivity and the precious nature of what was inside. What makes it precious there, Mr. Davis? What makes it precious, I wonder? Witnesses said that this guy and they witnessed a big boom, that they thought it was a sonic boom. Then they realized that there was like explosion, debris flying all around them. Anyhow, so there you go. That's a picture. You guys are seeing the screen. You're missing, if you're not seeing the screen, what you're missing is a collapsed roof. The guy drove right up to the front of it, looks like, and then detonated right in front of the windows and wrecked the building and a bunch of things around it. Okay. As many of you guys are catching on in the chat, it seems like the playbook. Yeah, what does the playbook look like? For those of you that are new to the program, let me just give you a quick briefer on it. What we do in the FBI, in the counterterrorism department, is we go find somebody that's doing really dumb things. We encourage them to continue with those dumb things, and we know how to incentivize them with the exact amount of money that they actually have, and we help them. Usually those things are giving them an inert bomb. But it turns out that there's a small possibility that any one of these people might get away from the actual control of the agents. That's why they tend to pick people who are really dumb and not really that motivated to begin with, without prodding and poking by the actual FBI agents and the undercovers that are working with them with the confidential human sources. There's always a possibility that you're going to get someone who decides that, you know what, I don't need to use my new friend that I found on the internet who's probably a Fed. Maybe I'll just do it for myself. And then you get something like this. Whether that's the case in this or not, it is an ongoing risk with the way the FBI does business. And it makes me very concerned that this is ongoing. All right. We're going to go to the exact moment when we lost the FBI. And take a deep breath here. Let me talk about my friends over at Patriot Coolers first, and then we'll get into the interview. How about this? The folks over at Patriot Coolers are making a fantastic product. They've been supporting us when nobody else did, going back to February of 2023 when we were still working out of a trailer. I'm greatly appreciative of what they have, and the upside is I can recommend them without ever having to fear about what the heck I'm talking about. PatriotCoolers.com, promo code Kyle. One of them always lives back here on the shelf. If you guys never seen these, one of you posted this, and I think it was Miss Jen Baker, posted this over on Twitter, but has matching suspendables in red, white, and blue, custom engraved Patriot Coolers. If you're going to swap out, if you ever have to retire a Stanley or a Yeti or any of the other sort of like anti-American, hating conservative type companies, check out Patriot Coolers as an alternative. And if you want them custom engraved with our stuff, you can do so. The link is in the show description. You'll save 10% with the promo code KYLE. If they're going to do something special for the upcoming holidays, I will try to give you an updated promo code. If you want to do something custom for your business, if you are looking to make a gift, or if you're trying to have an event, if you want to do housewarming for someone, you can get your own little images upgraded on there, and they will laser cut them in-house. They will do it. They won't cancel you for being a conservative. They're good people and a good company. Again, it's patriotcoolers.com, promo code KYLE. If you spend $50 or more, you're going to get free shipping over there. Check them out if you are in the market. That's all I'm going to say about that. Let's start with, if only we could understand what the mindset was of the people going in. This is 2018 Dan Bongino. I want to just give you the idea that in the beginning of the first Trump administration, he thought it was just about the upper level management and a small number of people who were upset, that were screwing up everything for all the good people. This is Dan Bongino, who was holding on to the line of the good men and women of the FBI, Sean Hannity style. Here he is on Fox talking about this. This is, again, is from 2018.
In the FBI right now are an unbelievably large number of really good people who are extremely pissed off. Can I say that?
Why?
On here?
Well, you did.
Because I just did, right? I guess it's a little late. They're PO'd because these guys have worked their entire lives to build up a professional reputation for themselves and the agency they're proud of. And it was dismantled in years by a couple of goofballs up there in management who decided that the Hatch Act and politics was first to them and the FBI was second.
Why are they still working there?
Because I believe some of the information they have is so devastating that better to have them in-house for a little while until you kind of debrief, if you get what I mean, and figure out what's going on.
And is that based on any inside information that Dan has? No. Does Dan know a bunch of people inside the FBI? Probably not. So his belief was the standard FBI thing, which is that if we could just change a couple of people in management, everything would be fine. As Dan moved forward and as time went on, moving into 2022, when Biden was in office, he realized Trump goes out. We have January 6th. We have a bunch of sort of the chaos that happens in 2021. Biden pulls out of Afghanistan, starts covering up. We see the media do a full court press. And suddenly you realize that the problem is probably a lot bigger than anybody thought. I have to imagine that Dan saw from the outside a lot of the things that I saw from the inside, and that the biggest problem that happened inside the FBI was the reveal that happened after January 6th. Yeah, it was bad in 2020. The response to the Capitol riot, the Portland riots and Minneapolis and so on, all of these sort of like wildly ridiculous, weak showings of federal law enforcement and the failure to prosecute or to go after folks in Antifa, that showed a soft sensibility towards something. But this clip shows you that Dan knew that the organization was broken, and we've showed it to you before, but I'm going to continue to do it, and then we're going to get into a whole bunch of what they had to say over on Thursday, Friday. I guess they did it last week and taped it, and it's all weak. I don't know where the guys that we were hoping were going to get into office, the Dan Bongino and Kash Patel that everybody wanted went. Now we just call them Dash over on the suspendable side. That's the Dan and Kash combo, because they might as well be the same person. And neither of them is the person that sounded like this.
This is an agency that has betrayed you and that oath you took. And to this man or woman who stepped forward and disclosed this horrific information about the FBI targeting a legitimate conservative journalist, I applaud you. Folks, we can't continue like this. We simply cannot. Unfortunately, this was not the only FBI story that came out yesterday. There was another one on the same day, showing you how bad this broken agency, we can't continue forward like this. No constitutional republic can continue with a weaponized arm of the government with guns and the ability to take your freedom like the FBI. We can't have it.
A secret police force that does intelligence primarily and then goes out and does criminal investigations into people that they've been investigating for intelligence. You can't have them. Here's 2022. By the way, I am not even a little bit amused by going back and reaching into the Dan Bongino catalog to find out that every single Dan Bongino episode for 8 years is now tagged with Vince Colonnese's name, because they just basically filled in and they weren't able to like break off and do, I don't know, like a new season or something like that. So now you have old Dan Bongino with Vince Colonnese's face on there. It's kind of funny. It's also kind of shows you that they thought that they could just keep you along for the ride. A lot of people are not crazy about the difference in style. I actually prefer Vince Colonnese when it comes to being honest and being an honest broker. I don't think he's in a position where he can do that right now. Anyway, here's Dan in 2022 as well, talking about the problem. And this is just from the regular podcast back when Joe was part of it. You remember him?
Oh, no. We can fix it. We just need some tinkering around the edges. No, it does not. The FBI needs to be disbanded. It is an entirely, completely failed operation. Two takeaways before I move on to a couple more things here. One, the desperation to take out Trump via bounties is clear. You wanted to pay this guy $1 million to prove a PP tape existed, and he couldn't, and you swore it existed anyway? Second, they knew it was fake. They knew it was fake, and they swore in front of a judge anyway.
Okay, who swore in front of a judge? Who went out there and did these testimonies? These are these are attorneys at OGC, the Office of General Counsel. These are people that are working within the Bureau that are not like senior level executives whose names you would actually hear. These were not the Andy McCabe. These are not the Peter Strzok's that were going out in front of the FISA court. Who were the ones that went out and pulled the warrants down and invaded the homes of January 6ers over misdemeanors with SWAT teams? It turns out some people actually did put a stop to that and said, I will not participate. And at some point in time, there was this click in Dan Bongino's brain, who's currently the deputy director of the FBI. The most powerful person in the FBI is the deputy director. The deputy is like the executive officer, runs the show. The director gives vision. The deputy runs the Bureau day to day and has to understand all of the mechanisms out there. They actually tell you in the middle of this this Maria Bartiromo interview that they're overwhelmed and they're only getting level 10 priorities. Like, don't tell me that that there's been a capture of the deep state and then prove to me that you've actually been captured by the deep state, because they actually have you running ragged because you don't even know which way your priorities are. They're telling you the priorities. Dan knew the mission, or at least he did, after Trump was elected. Personnel is policy, and anybody that touched any of these cases were supposed to be removed. There's a reason why there's ongoing litigation right now over January 6th names. Some of those agents were bad actors. The ones that went after assault with a federal, assault on a federal officer, I got no problem with them. If you're an FBI agent and you investigated someone for punching or hitting or obstructing a cop, that's a good faith operation. If you went after somebody for standing inside of velvet ropes and walking around and taking a video or a selfie, you are a problem. It was immediately clear to me that that was not the way that I signed up. It's not the thing that I signed up to go and do. So I refused to do it right away. And if I could do it, a guy who was a GS-13, I might have even been a GS-12 at the time, a GS-13 sitting in the Washington field office reviewing leads, if me, who was basically nobody in an enormous field office, said absolutely not, you will not have me do that. That's a violation of the First Amendment. That the allegations against most of these people is almost nothing. It's free speech and freedom of assembly. And if you didn't like where the place was, we've never gone after that before. Why would we start now? Then you know that personnel is the problem, because a ton of people should have said no. And people talk like this behind the scenes, by the way. For anybody who doesn't understand this, it's just like police officers who are asked to go do things that they know are look really awful and they shouldn't be doing it as cops, like defending some like hideous rally and being like marching. Like if you're a cop and you're told you have to go and you have to march in a parade for like the Pride Parade, and you don't want to do that because you have a religious problem with it, but they told you that you're going to lose your job if you don't, and you have a legitimate religious objection from doing so, and you do it anyway, that's on you. In the Bureau, there were tons of those people. Dan knew that. Anybody who touched these things should have been removed. Here he is saying that.
It is time for total personnel warfare. Do you understand that? Everybody has to go. Anyone in the justice system, a United States attorney, an AUSA, an assistant United States attorney, that's what we call them in the system. The intake AUSA, who decides, anyone who sniffed this case, touched this case, tweeted positively about this case, it is the president's full and final discretion to keep you hired in the DOJ. Pam Bondi, soon to be President Trump, soon to be Attorney General, everybody's got to go. It is time for, say it with me, folks, throw it in the chat right now, total personnel warfare.
Okay. Great. I agree. He understood the message. The FBI, it should be taken down to the studs. It should be disbanded, he said, in 22. Total personnel warfare. People who touched it, they need to be eliminated. This is obvious to anybody who understands how systems like this work. It should be obvious. We immediately got them wrong vibes because what is the first thing that Kash Patel did? He did his first interview with Trey Gowdy, and all he said was, trust me. A lot of words that had zero details, no concrete statements. And that is the same thing that I saw in this 30-minute piece with Maria Bartiromo. Here's Kash doing his first Fox hit after he went, quote unquote, radio silent for a month.
You've been on the job for about a month now. So tell us what you've seen and what you've learned.
Well, Trey, it's great to be with you, and I wanted to stay radio silent for the first month, just a laser focus on restoring law enforcement and the credibility and the trust of the American people and getting the weaponization out of there. And in order to do that, you need a strong Department of Justice, and we have a courageous leader in Attorney General Pam Bondi and her team over there. And we have to remind the folks in the American public that the FBI reports to the Department of Justice, and the FBI does not make prosecutorial decisions. We investigate based on lawful predications anywhere the facts lead us, and we work with our partners at DOJ. So that collaboration has been absolutely brilliant to set the new foundation for the FBI that we want to see serve the American people. And that's what we've been focusing on, is restoring the trust through the chain of command and through great leaders like Pam and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche and Payback.
That's a lot of words that says almost nothing whatsoever. Almost nothing is being conveyed with those words. We're going to restore the trust through the chain of command and through leadership. He's going to lean on this a little bit later, too. This is the moment when the battle for the FBI was lost. And it happened February 23rd. That's 3 days after Kash Patel was sworn in. Do you guys know that? That's the date. Kash Patel, this is coming from Newsweek. Kash Patel tells FBI staff to ignore Elon Musk's demand. What demand was that? That was for the what are the 5 things you did this week. That's when it was over. That's when it all stopped. Just so you know. There were people who were packing their things up. They were like, holy crap, this dude is going to end my career. I am done here. They put all their crap in banker boxes and they were prepared to be walked out the door because Kash Patel talked a big game. And 3 days after he got confirmed, he told them to ignore Doge and Elon Musk's demand because he went in and started his own agenda, which was that I'm going to be gentle with these people. That is the exact opposite of total personnel warfare. Do you guys know how easy it would be to say what the 5 things you did were working as an FBI employee? And if you didn't do 5 things in a week, why do you work for the American people at a significant cost? Why? I don't know either. Okay, we're going to go into the FBI being politicized and the interview. I'm just going to tell you, it started right here, and then I'm going to end with the last thing in the interview, which was the day when everybody unpacked their stuff. Here's the way it worked. They packed all their crap. Kash Patel was moved in on February 20th. On February 23rd, when everybody had their boxes of banker boxes and stuff in their car ready to go home, Kash told them, don't you worry about it. Don't you answer Elon Musk's email. And everybody took their boxes out of their car and they put them back in their desk, sitting on the counters, and they waited. And at the end of March, 1 month later, they unpacked because of the final thing that we're going to show you. So that's the phrase. It took about 5 weeks for everybody who should have been fired to realize that they were absolutely safe. Let's go to this interview from Fox.
You've said many times that the FBI has been politicized. Mm-hmm. So what are your plans to rebuild trust in this fine institution and depoliticize the FBI?
So we have a multi-part process. First of all, our priorities. Simple. Crush violent crime. Defend the homeland. Rigorous organizational accountability. And the fourth, which leads directly to your question, aggressive constitutional oversight with Congress. The way we rebuild trust is we already have the men and women here in the rank and file that signed up to be cops, that signed up to be intel analysts, that signed up to be special support staff, that want to do the work. That's why we're sending them into the field.
No. Absolutely not. You do not. Where's the Dan Bongino interrupting saying personnel is policy, total personnel warfare? Nobody signed up to be an FBI agent to become a freaking cop. Do you know how many people, probably like 25% of the people that are FBI agents that I worked with were former cops, and they left being cops to become federal investigators. They became criminal investigators 1811. That's what the job is. Cops do policing. They do proactive hanging out. They sit in spaces. They catch people who are speeding. They are waiting for in-the-second calls where they interrupt violent crime that is happening in the moment. They are not cops. You are not a cop when you are an FBI agent. With the small exception, the closest thing are the people on Indian reservations, which I did for a little bit, and Steve Friend did for a little bit as well. The closest thing you get to being a cop is being a detective in a major case squad, as you are the person who investigates major crimes on Indian reservations. It's the only thing that is cop-like about being an FBI agent. I didn't have the ability to pull people over, even though they taught us how to do vehicle stops. We didn't have the ability to do Terry stops in general. You can't just stop somebody as an FBI agent. You can't do a probable cause arrest on the street. Generally speaking, they will lose their ever-loving minds. The number of non-pre-planned arrests that an FBI agent goes through in their career, on average, is 0. Never. It doesn't happen. So him saying you're cops, go be cops, you signed up to be cops, is a fundamental misunderstanding of this thing. And I don't know why he sticks with it. I don't know why it hits home with Americans, because it tells me that Americans also don't know what the FBI is. We're going to go a little bit further. This is, we're just going to keep moving. His fix for it is that we're going to send people out into the field because we already have the right people. Dead wrong.
Yeah, but come on, Director, with all due respect, we've been talking about this for a long time, and I've been demanding accountability for many, many years. One of the, you mentioned Comey, Strzok, and the rest, they've got TV shows, they've got media platforms, they're fine, there's been no accountability.
Well, look, it's a fair criticism, but what I will tell people is we weren't here in the FBI in the last 5 years when we had statute of limitations that were still in play, where we could have investigated criminal conduct. Most of these statute of limitations are 5 years old.
Stop it right there. Wait a minute. They're talking about accountability in the aftermath of the Russia collusion narrative and all the lies that went after Donald Trump, the things that Dan Bongino said, anybody who touched that case, and by the way, there are definitely still people that are in the FBI that touched that case. All of them have to go, remember? All the way down to the assistant United States attorneys, all the way down to the BRIC agents and the analysts and anybody that was touching it that was doing so in a favorable way. And what did Kash just tell you? Statute of limitations, it's run out. It's gone. We're going to do a little Kash versus Dan right here because it turns out that Dan always knew that. Here's Dan, 2022, telling you no one's ever going to pay for this stuff. They actually knew this. If they were being honest about it, that's what you would say. No one's going to pay for this. We're sorry that we told you that we could get them. It turns out that all these crimes are too old, and there's a 5-year statute of limitation on all of them. I'm not 100% convinced that's true, by the way, but here you go. Dan, 2022.
Full of crap. They've been telling us something's going to happen forever. Nothing happens. Joe, they're not listening to this show.
Because let me tell you for the 1,000th time, I am not convinced anything is going to happen to these people at all. Anything. Right. However, when
However, that's it. However, he was saying if you find something really big, then you should do something about it. The fact of the matter is they knew that this wasn't going to go anywhere. It wasn't going to happen. Now you're going to get some Bongino time. The question is, hey, why are we not seeing results? And the answer is you need to give us more time. We've only been here for a few months. These are from people that spent a decade making money, making millions, literally millions of dollars, talking about the problem like they understood it. Did you guys think that it was supposed to be like some really long, drawn out 6 to 8 month like learning curve? Didn't you want to hire people that knew how to do it? Where are the Doc Chambers versions who should be working over there with DOD? Where's the Garrett O'Boyle and the Steve Friends who were willing to go back and work for these guys and help them out? I don't want to work there. I don't want to go to DC at all. That sounds awful. That would be like a prison sentence for me. My wife and I had this like really hard conversation where we said we'd do it if we had to, but God, I don't want to do that. I hope that that cup passes from me and that somebody else is in a position to do it. By the way, I told them who they should hire to go do that. The people who actually understood what the problem looked like. Somebody who has represented whistleblowers for like a decade and totally gets how the FBI works and is probably one of the most feared people by FBI management. Instead, what happened? They encouraged someone to write a hit piece about him. More on that later. Here's Dan talking about, it's only been 2 months. Remember, it's only been 1 month and we're working on chain of command and leadership.
A 38,000 member organization and an approximately $12 billion budget.
Fair point.
Where to expect us in 2 months to dig up what was a 8-year, maybe longer, multi-year politicized investigation with multiple layers of processes, from Woods procedures being just thrown in the garbage can and flushed down the toilet bowl, to multiple layers of accountability where people lied and obfuscated. I'm not asking you to trust me. You want this done right or you want it done quickly? Because you can't have it both ways. You want it done quickly, we'll do it. And you know what'll happen? Just what happened last time. Those same Spygate collusion perpetrators sued the government, got money, got all this. You want that? We'll do it. We'll do it quickly and do it wrong.
But are you saying you found things that even you didn't know about? I mean, you were at the core of this.
Yes. I was the lead Russiagate investigator for the House Intelligence Committee, and I've been on both your shows in a prior life.
Here's what I recognize. I've been on Dan Bongino's radio show. I was on his podcast, and I was on his Fox News channel. When I was on him with this Fox channel, he was the least like Dan Bongino that you ever saw him. And the reason why is because he read off a teleprompter. Can we agree on that? Anybody who kept track of all the places that he was on? Because I was on all three. When you talk to Dan on the podcast, it was a little bit tighter when we were actually sitting face to face. It was like two guys having an interview. That's pretty nice. I would go on sometimes and it was a little bit more stilted because it's tight. But the radio show was the most real Dan Bongino there was, in my experience. That's just what I took away from it. It was the most uncut. I could drop information on him. He would react like a regular person. He would do a quick segue. We'd come back into it. He would let me talk whatever needed to be said. He would be like, man, I didn't even realize that stuff. I constantly dropped novel information on Dan Bongino because he didn't know about the FBI because he wasn't in the FBI. That's not his fault. The most stilted you ever saw was Dan Bongino on Fox. He read off a teleprompter and he stayed to the script because they have strict time limits and things that you can do for when you have to do your breaks and so on and so forth. It's a very tight window for the guest. I saw Fox News Dan go out here and do this piece. That's what I saw. I didn't see the Dan that was freewheeling and knew what the problem was. I didn't see the Dan who understood the nature of the problem. I saw a Dan that was doing something that is unnatural, uncomfortable, and like looking away. And there he is right there. Let's go back and we're going to play a little bit more of this Kash piece where they're talking about the like, how did you not know about the thing that you were supposedly the investigator on? Is that acceptable? Isn't that and saying that you can't do all the things right now. Nobody wants you to finish the quote unquote investigation today. I don't think he's the one who's doing the investigation anyway. That's not what the DD does. Later on, he tells you he's in basically meetings from sun up to sundown. Somebody else is doing that investigation. Personnel is policy. That means you have to have people you trust. Who's in there? People you don't know, can't vet, don't have any experience with, and they've come forward and you just assume they're good actors, even though previously you said they were all problematic. The thing that should have happened to everybody that was a GS-15 and above is you're gone. Because all of you said yes to COVID tyranny. Dan talked about it previously. Kash knew what the problem was. Every single person that was involved in previous management should have been gone. And then you flip the model on its head and you get the people that are closest to the case agent work and let them do it. It's not what happened. Here we go.
I was the lead Russiagate investigator for the House Intelligence Committee, and I've been on both your shows in a prior life talking about it. And I'm telling you and the American public that we have now found material and information and people who wanted to hide it from the world since we got in these seats. And we, as the deputy said, we are trying to do it in a fashion where not only are we informing the American public of what happened, but we can have accountability for it. And that takes a little bit more time. And when you layer on the fact that we are rolling out our priorities on violent crime and defending the homeland, you know, we're running a three-part animal here, and we're going 100 miles an hour on each single one.
So important.
Wait, I want to add to that, too, because what the director's saying is right. You got to remember, we come in the morning, there's a portfolio of 100 level 10 items.
There's a portfolio that is 100 level 10 items means the FBI is now running the deputy and the director. What did we tell you would happen? Bubble wrapping. If you were going to send people in there that didn't know that they have to set their own priorities, that they tell the FBI what to do and not the FBI tells them what to do. The rest of this interview, they argue to credentialism. You know, we know all these things and we were all these places and we're so honest and that's how it works. What they have admitted to in this interview, which is very clear to me. And by the way, I've had people inside the Bureau reach out and say the same thing, that these guys come in and say whatever it is and everybody's just on their phones ignoring them and doing whatever it is they want because the FBI keeps running the way they are. They are keeping these guys distracted with all the things. The FBI can run itself without any director or deputy director. It proves that every time you have an acting director in there. You don't need these guys to tell the people doing counterterrorism to make sure that nobody sets a bomb off in New York City. They're doing that. It doesn't require director level access or deputy director level access or associate deputy director level access or even an assistant director. It doesn't need any of those things. Every special agent in charge of every field office, every ASEC, every squad supervisor knows what the priority of their threat in their area is. So they deal with it. They're autonomous little functional things. It's like saying that if the general is not paying attention to what every single platoon is doing out in the field, that those platoons aren't going to make the right decision about whether or not they go into a building or not go into a building, whether they take a high value target in or not when they are, approached with one. It's absurd for all of you military guys. It's like saying, for all of you cops out there, it's like saying you think that cops need to be told whether or not to engage with a violent felon who's out there on the street. No, obviously that's the top priority. And you're going to drop some sort of traffic enforcement to go after somebody that's engaged in violent felonies and pursue the public's most pressing interest. The level 10 priorities are all getting done. They have to be done. He makes this silly argument. I'm going to let him make the rest of it here, but I put this on there. They basically say they have too much work to do, and that they're completely overwhelmed by what they have to do. So they're not actually focusing on the things that we thought they were going in to do.
If it's a level 9, which is a pretty big freaking deal, someone else fixed it.
It's
the
made
only
up, by
thing
the way.
that gets
There's no
to my
level 9.
desk or his is a level 10. That's the entire day. Look at his schedule any given day. I'll show you the palm card I have. It is filled from 7:30 to he leaves 7 at night, 6:30 at night. It's filled all day. We just can't focus on one thing. You want New York to go boom? DC to go boom? You want an OC organization to go hack into some cyber network and crack all of Fox News' holdings? We're dealing with all that stuff, too.
You don't need to deal with that. You're the deputy and you're the director. You don't have to worry about the individual cases. You get briefed on them because they're ongoing if the threat materializes, but you don't have to play that game. So they're getting run by the FBI, and they're telling you right now that they're getting run by the FBI, which has told them, you need to pay attention to all of our critical priorities. If you don't know about them, they're not getting done. That is micromanagement, and that's how you suck people in. When we're doing shooting, one of the ways that you lose spatial awareness is you get sucked into your rifle scope. You get sucked into the red dot on your pistol, and you don't see the things that are happening around you to make really good environmental decisions. They're getting lost in the minutia when they should be looking backwards at the broad scope. You're never going to want to see a general in bed with a small platoon that is going out and executing mission sets. Why? Because they still have to see things from the tactical space, from the strategic space, not from like the nuts and bolts going in through a door. This is all silliness. Okay. They're going to talk about, what is this thing? I've got another little note here. This is the next little time clip, so I can't even remember. Some of these things are there's so many of these little pieces that they dropped in that are nuggets. All it told me is they're getting overwhelmed. They're getting worked by the Bureau, and the Bureau is running them.
Put the FBI and its reputation at risk. What, it was just to win an election? Why?
Because they're weak. Because they're weak. I hate weak people. I can't stand it. They didn't have, we're on TV, so I already said BS once, but they didn't have the guts, the courage, or the character to do the right thing. They did the easy thing. Donald Trump became a convenient political football. They thought they could leverage. They thought they thought with the media on their side that they'd get away with it.
I know that there are cells, drug trafficking cells and human trafficking cells. How significant is this in America?
So just so you guys understand, she asked what the priorities are. And one of the things that Kash said they were going to do is go out and fight human trafficking. They're going to fight drug trafficking, that they're going to basically not say that counterterrorism is the biggest threat to the homeland. By the way, the previous administration said that. It still continues to be a real threat, that like the people that we've brought into this nation should actually be probably way more dangerous than the folks that are doing human trafficking or drug trafficking. When it comes to the actual ability to cause harm to American citizens at this point, I don't think they're accurate, but they're being told where they should go. The question is, have they changed the priority on drug trafficking and human trafficking in what's called IPM, the Integrated Program Management? We're going to go long today. That has to be done. Integrated Program Management is the bonus structure that tells you where you're going to put your troops, where you're going to put your agents and your investigators and your analysts. And if they haven't upped it, and I'm not confident these guys understand IPM because it took me forever to understand it. I was at the academy and they taught it. It made no sense to me. I was out in the field and they taught it and it didn't make any sense to me. And until you've actually gone through it and seen what people are doing and listened to the bitching of the managers on the front end and seen what the higher level managers are, getting all worked up about, that has nothing to do with the cases that are actually happening in your space, you do not understand how problematic IPM is. But at the simplest level, it's the quota system that tells you how you're going to get paid. So if you're not incentivizing special agents in charge and ASACs to go out there and find child traffickers and drug traffickers and other human traffickers, then you're going to be screwed. If you haven't fixed IPM, if you don't understand the nuts and bolts of that organization, it's all over for you. Here's Kash. He's going to talk about how basically he was told where the problems are. And so now they are doing reactive nonsense.
It's everywhere. I mean, when you open up the border, look, that's not a political statement. The border was open for 4 years. So what happens is crime metastasizes. What happens is you have hundreds of thousands of illegals come across, and a bunch of them are really bad criminals. Not all of them, but a bunch of them. And then they nest into societies. And this is why we're rolling out Mexican street gang task forces across the country, because it's not the international gangs that are just the problem. It's these inner city gangs that exist in one or two towns here and there and have metastasized and taken over the drug trade, the sex trafficking trade, the child forced labor trade, and the gang trade. They are all in, and no one has been focusing on them because our cities and our elected leadership has allowed them to live without being policed. But that's over now that Dan and I are in the seat.
The FBI doesn't do policing. Local criminal gangs, that's a local criminal problem. They have police departments, they have sheriff's office, they have all kinds of other things that can go after that. When it comes to drugs, we have an entire administration called the DEA that can go after drugs if that's really such a big deal. And by the way, the ATF does it as well, because where there's drugs, there's guns. So what are you talking about? The priorities of the FBI has always been long-term, complex investigations with theoretically smart people who do things that other groups cannot do. That's the FBI's bread and butter. Long-term, complex fraud investigations, long-term, complex white-collar investigations, deep and long-term, theoretically, infiltrations of terrorist cells, even though most of them end up being setup jobs because it's a lot easier to get setup jobs. In theory, the FBI is supposed to be looking with a very long telescopic lens. What is the strategic threat to the homeland? And you have a pretty good group of people that are not supposed to be doing kinetic daily hits on stuff. And they've always given a very, very small pittance over to human trafficking. So what banded threat level, because that's the words they use. There's no level 9, level 10. What is the banded threat that human trafficking, that child sex trafficking has been raised to inside the FBI nationally? Is it a band 1 threat? That would be the highest. Is it a band 2 or a band 3? Those are the 3 highest. What about locally? Has every single field office recategorized their IPM to tell us what child sex trafficking is? And is it a banded threat in every single one of those areas? Because if not, this is all nonsense. And they could talk about that stuff if they knew it, if they were being honest. You'd think that guys that were in the detail business and did podcasts and did interviews for a decade would be able to talk about that. Instead, we get generalities and broad, non-specifics. So she asked the question next about, what about new agents? Are you guys doing well with hiring? Because we all wanted less people in the FBI. We all wanted less information, like less human beings that could go out and violate our civil liberties, because we already saw what they would do with it. And so the question comes up, Are you getting enough people to do the job? Have you assigned the right number of people to work? Are enough people going to work child sex trafficking because they want to go and tout this Operation Restore Justice, which is just a rebrand of Operation Cross Country? And instead of answering the question, they did something completely novel. They filibustered, like politicians do.
Are you seeing an increase in the number of potential agents wanting to come in and work with you?
Look. Okay, make note of what that question was. Are new agents coming in to work with you? And this is all talking about in the context of child sex trafficking.
The FBI is 38,000 when we're fully manned, which we're not. In the National Capital Region, in the 50-mile radius around Washington, D.C., there were 11,000 FBI employees. That's like a third of the workforce. A third of the crime doesn't happen here. So we're taking 1,500 of those folks and moving them out.
So you've got a third of the workforce in D.C., and you're going to take 10% of that third and send them out into the field. So you're going to now take a bunch of people who have voluntarily agreed to be at headquarters and not be part of the direct, actionable mission of the FBI, doing investigations and running these cases. There's basically two groups of people. There's the GS-13s that are doing the work. There's the GS-14s that are supervising the squads. The people that want to stay closest to the work for longest are the people that should be running the FBI if they were really serious about turning this around. Instead, what he did is he said, we're going to send 1,500 mediocre, ticks that are all hanging out at headquarters. We're going to shut down the TDY program, which is how we filled headquarters in the first place, making people come in for 18 months at a time, paying them per diem. They talk about that later in the interview, and having them hang out in DC and get their feet wet so they can realize that they want to be there, and that's where the power is, and that's where all the promotions are. You're going to send those people out to the field. You're going to send them out to Missoula, Montana to go screw up what Missoula's got going on. You're going to go send them out to Cheyenne, Wyoming. You're going to go send them out to Stockton, California, or you're going to send them out to Austin, Texas. And so now these people are going to go and gum up the works and be useless somewhere else instead of being at headquarters where at least they were out of the way. The answer was always the same. Personnel is policy, total personnel warfare, everybody over a GS-15, you're immediately going to find yourself shipped somewhere that you don't want to live. Probably Guam or Puerto Rico, if you ask me. Get them the hell out of the United States. Let them all retire. If they can't retire, let them find either a new job laterally or get to actual work and start doing work where they are. Instead, you've got him saying there's 38,000 people when we're fully staffed, and we're not even fully staffed. And he's asking for more money and more staff. That is not what you people were saying you wanted. This drives me batshit crazy. It really does. So are they going to go and work on child porn?
State's getting a plus up. And I think when we do things like that, we inspire folks in America to become intel analysts and agents and say, we want to go work at the FBI because we want to go fight violent crime and we want to get sent out into the country to do it. And that's what we're doing. In the next 3, 6, 9 months, we're going to do that hard. And, I didn't know that I was going to do this, but I'm going to announce it on your show anyway.
So did he say that they were going to go assign these 1,500 people to go work child sex trafficking? No, he's just going to send them out into the field, go find something to do. Go be a former GS-15. Now go be a 13 somewhere. Or we'll find you a 14 job to sit around on a desk and do nothing and be supervisor of no one. So what's really important is that we get a new building, though.
This FBI is leaving the Hoover building because this building is unsafe for our workforce, and we want the workforce.
He just gave up a big nugget.
We want the American men and women to know, if you're going to come work at the premier law enforcement agency in the world, we're going to give you a building that's commensurate with that.
That's what we wanted, right? Isn't that what you guys wanted to hear? You wanted to find an agency that was going to give them a building that was going to be commensurate with the premier law enforcement agency in the world. They should go to work every day and be proud of the beautiful building they work in. The people that work in Indian country do the most violent crime work in the entire FBI. Many of them work out of freaking trailers, FEMA trailers, if they're lucky. They might work out of their desk, which is mobile. They might be working out of the front seat of a Ford Explorer or an F-150. That's pretty common. They do the most work. They don't need to go into a fancy building. The people that I worked with in Shelby, Montana, which does more violent crime per capita probably than any other reservation work out there, it is nonstop to the point where they turn people over every 3 years. It's a hardship post because the weather is atrocious. The people there are constantly doing horrific things to each other. And everybody you deal with might be potentially dangerous. Agents get there in their first year and end up in shootouts, chasing drunk drivers off the res who are trying to run over the local cops and stuff like that. Their building is unremarkable. It's like a temporary building that you'd find at a middle school in the middle of some suburban area in America. You don't need to have an awesome building. What you need to do is get to freaking work. But let's give them a good building because that's what we're all about. Obviously, Kash doesn't care about status.
And that's not this place.
The Trump administration has proposed a $500 million cut to the FBI's funding for 2026. How are you going to maintain the effectiveness if you don't have the resources?
We got to get smart and stop wasting money.
Okay, so they're going to get smart. They're going to stop wasting money. Does that mean that they're going to not ask for more money? No, it means that they're going to keep asking for money. Let's go to where they ask for more money.
We also know that there's ramifications from people here that weaponize this place and a cost to that. We're always going to fight for our personnel and for as much money as we can get. But I think when we show you real-time examples of getting out of places like this, because just to fix this building would cost billions of dollars only for a couple of years of runway, it shows you that we're serious about saving and being good stewards of the taxpayer dollars and hiring more agents.
Great. That's what we need. We need to hire more agents. We need a bigger building because this has the same vibe as Eric Adams. Do you guys remember when Eric Adams said that by giving illegal aliens a bunch of money, like $500 million worth of money, he was a smart manager, that people would look back and say he was a smart manager of their money because giving them money up front was better than giving them money later on when they needed it? That's the same vibe that I'm getting from Kash right here. I thought these guys understood the mission. I really did. And like, no one is more disappointed than me. I'm crestfallen. Okay? I couldn't be more disappointed with how this comes out. And them sitting together and doing this Abbott and Costello routine where Dan is the passive and submissive one and Kash like sort of like femininely espouses a bunch of trust me bros. No serious examples given in any of these things. No concrete examples at all. Because the FBI is still running the way the FBI always did. Because these guys are just getting wrapped up with tier 1 priorities, whatever the heck that is.
We are saving the taxpayer a fortune.
So are you going to move 1,000 employees from Washington to field offices across the country?
1,500.
1,500.
We are. We are already launched that plan, and we've looked at...
They're going to Alabama?
Well, so Redstone Arsenal is one of the crown jewels of the FBI, and it's on a military campus of 38,000 acres in Huntsville, Alabama.
That's
and
a lot of words that says
built
nothing.
5 new buildings there, and a kinetic cyber training facility, a long-range facility, our terrorism explosive device centers there. So when you go and you want to become a new FBI agent, we send you to Quantico. When you're in the job for a couple of years and you need advanced training, you go to Huntsville. And because we've had new buildings and new structures already there, we need our outdated facilities and personnel to move to Huntsville, where the training has been set up for them, and fill those seats. We don't need to build new buildings elsewhere. So a chunk of them are going there because it's essentially headquarters too, for lack of a better word. But
okay. He said that there were 11,000 FBI employees in the D.C. area, and 1,500 are going to go around the country, and a chunk of them are going to go down to Alabama. Does that sound like solving the problem to you just numerically? 11,000, 1,500 moved out. That still leaves us with like 9,500 people hanging out in the D.C. area. You've got still about a third. Now it's like closer to a quarter. 25% instead of 33% is not enough to move the needle when you told us that you were going to do total personnel warfare. Total. All of them. It's all problematic. The problem is not getting solved. It's not getting corrected. We're going to scan forward a little ways here, and we're going to get to the real scary stuff, I think. Everybody got really excited about the Epstein situation. We'll do that too. Might as well. But let's go ahead and do this one here. January 6th. Are we going to get some answers? Are we going to find out what's going to happen? Here comes a little bit more of, rather than us actually having answers and waiting a week to do this, we're going to come forward and just tell you, you have to wait a week. This seems to be what these guys do. Kick the ball down the curb. Remember, I waited a month to come talk to you because I wanted to tell you that I'm working on leadership and command and chain of command. And now I'm going to tell you that you have to wait another week here. Everything is just trust me. None of these things are like, look what we've already done. Here's the people that we've gotten rid of. Here's a list of the names we have had to fire. They got rid of what? Brian Auten and a couple of people?
Situation is Russiagate. Because on January 6th, in the prior Trump administration, I was the chief of staff to the Department of Defense. And I spent 4 years in a minor fortune litigating the truth because people politicized what actually happened on January 6th. And we now know unequivocally that President Trump lawfully authorized the deployment of National Guard, and me as the head of the Office of Secretary of Defense, with the Secretary of Defense, took that action. When it finally came in, because it had to have the governor and mayor of D.C.'s approval on it. That's the way the law works. And once it finally came in on January 6th, remember, we offered to them days beforehand, and they rejected it. And we've put out the letters, and your show has done great.
This is so much of a filibuster. The question is, are we going to find out the truth about January 6th or not? Are we going to find out what was going on there?
Coverage showing how it was rejected. We mobilized the fastest cold start in Washington, D.C. since World War II, and the largest occupation of D.C. by the National Guard since the American Revolution. That's what happened on January 6th. But what you and your viewers want to know, now that we've beat back that disinformation campaign with actual truth, is what was the FBI doing? Well, we got answers coming. We just found a trove of information, and it's on its way to Capitol Hill right now. And they've asked, and they're getting them, and you're getting.
Oh, man, outstanding. You know what I heard? I heard that the Epstein files were on Pam Bondi's desk. You remember that? And then there were those binders, and then nothing. I'm not even so naive as to think that it matters whether or not the American people get stuff. But stop saying this crap. We got files, and they are on the way to people who are not you, who are going to be able to review them, and not you. This is so embarrassing. Like, they would have been better with just not saying anything and letting us just think the worst than go out and prove this.
Answers on January 6th. You're getting answers on what sourcing was utilized, what money was utilized, how many assets were utilized, who made those decisions.
The OIG already did this.
We can only control the FBI, but you're getting it from the FBI.
Yeah, we know a bunch of that already.
Were there FBI agents undercover egging people on?
This is a really good question. Did the FBI have people who were not undercovers, because the OIG said they were not UCs, that's a specific FBI program, but were there people that worked for the FBI that were agents in plain clothes doing my old job that were doing some sort of incitement? And I don't think the answer is going to be yes, by the way. Kash is going to tell you right now.
Like I said, that answer is coming, and it's on its way to Congress.
Yeah. You know who has the ability to do something about it? Not Congress.
I saw it. I saw the portfolio of information.
Oh, damn. He saw it.
We dug far and wide to find it. And I'm pretty sure now we have a conclusive, definitive answer. But you and the public are going to have it. You're going to see it in writing over to Capitol Hill. But I just want to be sure we're clear, having been an agent and a police officer. There is a difference between an agent. I know you know this. I don't mean to sound ridiculous. An agent, meaning a trained GS 1811.
Yeah, and an informant. We get it, Dan. People who work for the FBI and people who actually are the FBI. We understand. Okay, look, Dan was a cop and a Secret Service agent. So he tells you as a cop and a Secret Service agent. And Kash tells you as a guy who worked at DOD and used to do some other things and was the primary investigator on the thing. This is all credentialism. It's let me lean back on things that you guys already believe in and let me tell you nothing right now. Are we being real serious right now? Of course we are. This is the way it's going to go down. So let's go ahead and get the last little piece here. This is the last ugliness. Epstein suicide and the end of when people started moving back into their cubicles. I'm going to tell you the two things. The Epstein suicide and the promotion of Steve Jensen. You probably didn't know this, but Steve Jensen was a whistleblower. Not the kind like Doc Chambers, not the kind like Steve Friend, not the kind like Seraphin or Garrett O'Boyle, who said, by the way, this is illegal, immoral, or unethical, and I won't participate in it. And I'm going to bring this information to Congress, and I think that somebody should know, and hopefully somebody will do some damn oversight on it, which they've proven they won't do. He was the kind of whistleblower that said, hey, I think this is problematic, and I don't think we should do this. And they said, yes, we should do this. And he went like, oh, okay, I'll do that. He was the ordinary men type of whistleblower. And the reason that's really important is because they're trying to act like something that is obviously not true is true, which is that anybody who said something was wrong and then did it anyway is somehow like not culpable for doing the thing they did when they were an SES member of the Bureau. By the way, they can get rid of Steve Jensen tomorrow. He only has, he started in 2006, which means he's sub 20 years. He won't get that pension if they got rid of him when they should have. And if you guys listen here, we'll give you the Calkines, we'll give you the Garrity situation. We'll explain to you how Miranda works when you actually are a federal employee and how you don't need to promote someone to get information. Here's a bunch of lies and snowballing. And it's just, I'm going to lean back.
You said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
Oh, really?
He killed himself. You want me to? I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
I know it's hard work.
It's hard work to see the file. It's hard work. How many suicides do you think Kash has actually been out to? The odds are pretty low, like not very many. And Dan maybe did when he was a police officer. Like you see some suicides, sure. Usually the investigation is not conducted by the patrol officer that finds it. It's done by an investigator, somebody who does death investigations. The FBI has like this many death investigations. They're almost exclusively done in Indian country. I've done maybe 5 suicides, something like that. You get an autopsy. It looks like a suicide. You check the obvious things. You ask about depression and things like that. Do I think that Jeffrey Epstein could have killed himself? 100%. Do I think that he did so just because he was like, oh, there's no way out? The odds that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself with like no prompting from the outside is very low to me. Statistically, if I had to guess what was going on there, I would say that somebody probably told him that he had a couple of options. Either he takes himself out or they're going to do horrible things to people that he cares about. Because Jeffrey Epstein, he may have been a monster, but he wasn't a person that didn't know other human beings. And you got to believe that he cared about some people in the world. So that's kind of what you do. You look out there and you go, could somebody have pressured him into taking his own life to cover up all that information? For sure. Isn't that still kind of a murder if somebody extorts you or blackmails you into suicide? Isn't that the entire thing that they keep talking about sextortion or other blackmail rings? If they have something on you where they say someone around you is going to be hurt, then isn't that still a homicide? I think it is. I think it's how we classify that stuff. But they saw the file, guys. We just need you to trust me because they said so. We're going to finish off here with Jensen.
But you promoted Stephen Jensen, the architect of the FBI's overzealous January 6th investigation.
I want the American public to realize what we did. That man was in a position where he literally fought back against the machine who was saying, we want to politicize this event. We want to politicize this event. And at the end of the day, remember, Maria, there's a chain of command here. So you can fight back your chain of command to a certain degree before they fire you. And Steve Jensen and other folks were promoted because they embody what the American public demands of FBI agents.
That is total, utter, and unadulterated bullshit. I will be incredibly specific. That is nonsense. That does not make you righteous in the eyes of anybody that wanted those guys to go in and clean something up. He said something, pushed back, and then decided to do what they said. How many of you think that these guys would have given Steve D'Antuono a pass? Remember Steve D'Antuono? He was the guy that was the head of the Detroit field office when they did the Whitmer hoax. Did he run that operation? No. Did he greenlight some of it? Probably. Did he greenlight some of the money? Maybe. I don't know. Everybody gave him a ton of hard push because of that. Then he went to the Washington field office, and he was the boss of the Washington field office when the pipe bomber case was going on. He testified to Thomas Massey under oath that when they went after President Trump at Mar-a-Lago, Steve D'Antuono, who was the boss of the office that I worked for, pushed back. And he said, I don't think we should do a search warrant at Mar-a-Lago. I think that that is a step too far. I think we should do a consent-based search only. That's the only thing that we should spend our resources on. Do any of those guys right there want to hire back Steve D'Antuono, who quit, retired, because he was disgraced and he wasn't going to move up any further because he was outed for going after and being responsible for the Mar-a-Lago search warrant, even though he's the one who said, I don't think we should do it, and he was quote-unquote overruled from on high? Did he resign his post over it like somebody of honor would do? Like you'd expect someone like Doc Chambers to do? When they said, hey, go give this shot, if he had a moral objection to it, he wouldn't do it? No, they didn't do that. Steve D'Antuono is not guiltless. Stephen Jensen is not guiltless. Stephen Jensen was promoted, and the minute that he was promoted, which happened in the last couple days of March of 2025, that's when everybody moved all their stuff back in. Because if Stephen Jensen can stay, the guy who called everybody a terrorist, maybe he was asked to do it, maybe he wasn't, maybe he resisted it, I don't give a shit. Here's Dan Bongino making things up, saying three things are really actually, he says that you need three things, but he gives you two things, and then he says, just trust me, bro, again. And it's nauseating. It's so ridiculous.
Get to the bottom of something like January 6th and the pipe bomber case, for example. You need three things. You need people, you need information, and you need people with information. I'll allow the public to put that together.
Let me put this together. Anybody who's at headquarters did not know what was happening at the pipe bomber case more than the freaking GS-14 who was running the squad that was doing it, or the actual agents, the GS-13s that were running the case. That is pure and unadulterated bullshit. Now, what we know is the following happened. At that time, go to the chat over here. At the time when they promoted this guy, they didn't realize what they stepped in. And the minute they did, they changed the policy. So the FBI is no longer releasing these types of press releases. This is one of the last ones you'll see. Stephen J. Jensen named assistant director in charge of Washington field office. It was released first week of April, like after they already promoted him and we started going out there and calling him out. The reason that they changed their policy on this, from everything I'm being told, is that they realized they stepped into an absolute shitstorm because they don't know the background on these people, and they didn't realize that they're being recommended, the scumbags who were the problem, And so now the policy is they're not going to do any more press releases. You won't see press releases of senior FBI executives getting promoted. We're being told that if people go and look for their name to find out if they got the promotion, they're going to be investigated internally. They're out there 100% trying to do damage control because guys like me are going to call out all the bullshit. And every single person that works in the Bureau that knows that these people are problematic, they reach out and they let us know, hey, by the way, here's the sins of this guy. He's got this sexual malfeasance. He's been compromised because of this. This guy got promoted when he didn't deserve it for all these other reasons. All of these people have a history in the Bureau, and everybody that is in management at the SES level does not belong there. I agree with Dan Bongino, CIRSA 2022, CIRSA 2025, total personnel warfare. It was the only answer. These guys got rich talking about something when they apparently didn't know what the hell they were talking about. You can do a Garrity or a Kalkine's warning, and you can compel the testimony of people who work for you. So if you want people and information and people with information, which is just two things, you go and get them. I had headquarters butt into my cases when I was working at Washington field office, and they thought they knew more about the case than I did. I had someone come out and say, hey, look, one of the intel assets that you're looking into is actually traveling in Africa. And I'm like, no, that's not the case. You've got the wrong information. It turns out I'm the one running this investigation. You are not. Headquarters always knows less. Think about this. The people on the ground know what's happening. The headquarters units are briefed at some level, and the people above that are briefed even less. The person who's the senior executive running the entire domestic terrorism operation does not know what was happening in the ground investigation, even though they just disbanded the entire unit, apparently. They did not know. Stephen Jensen doesn't have unique knowledge. That's made up because you guys can't confirm or deny it. But I'll tell you that it's not true. It's pretty obviously not true. And they can push back all they want. Now they're going to go out there and we're going to finish off by saying they don't look into the media what's going on. I've been told specifically that my name is brought up in meetings, that they are doing policy to try to keep me from telling you this information. I'm not shitting you this stuff. This is not self-aggrandizing. This is two men that do not know that they are being handled, or they know it and now they just don't want to look bad. And it's embarrassing for all of us, especially those of us who went to bat and said, these are the guys who can fix the problem. Apparently, they didn't actually ever believe it themselves. How sad.
And just wait, and you'll see. Nothing we're doing, nothing is by accident.
People who are, quote unquote, supposedly on the side of reporting truthfully should take a look at this instance. Because they are setting up circular firing squads. And Dan and I have already told the FBI, every employee that acted appropriately, we are going to defend you to the hill. Literally, no matter the consequences. But for the media, who's gone through the disinformation cycle of Russiagate, of January 6th, for them to come in here and take the clickbait and write articles based on half-truths doesn't hurt us. This is what I'll tell you something I didn't think we were going to get into today. But every morning we tell our leadership cadre when we sit down with them, nothing written in the media is going to affect him or me.
Look, you said illegal alien criminals and...
Yeah. And then she goes and asks some other follow-up questions. Nobody believes what they just said, including them. You guys watch their body language. You watch their the way that they carried themselves through that interview. Did those guys look like they were confident, understood, were being forthcoming? Or were those people that were being cagey and guarded and hoping that the MAGA cheerleaders would pick up the talking points? Nothing was said in that interview that dropped any knowledge. They didn't give you any schematics, and they could. These are not secrets. We're talking about personnel problems. Again, total personnel warfare, personnel problems. You fix them by getting rid of personnel. You think these people are not going out there and running a PR campaign? They are legitimately running an FBI. I had two people reach out to me that are longtime supervisors that have been working for the Bureau for north of 15 years. And they said, we are currently being run by people who are being managed by social media influence. They are looking around and trying to see which way the wind is blowing and trying to keep Donald Trump happy, and so that the press is mostly favorable and the MAGA base is happy. That's what you guys wanted. That's what you're going to get. If you guys want accountability, it turns out that's not happening. You know who knew it? Again, Dan knew it. He knew they weren't going to be held accountable because statute of limitations. That's the biggest thing they said, that no one's going to be prosecuted. Things that Dan knew in 2022.
Full of crap. They've been telling us something's going to happen forever. Nothing happens. Joe, they're not listening to this show because let me tell you for the 1,000th time, I am not convinced anything is going to happen to these people at all.
Nothing is going to happen to these people. Do you know the only person that seems like they actually understand the nature of the problem and the time is of the essence is Ed Martin. I don't know Ed Martin personally. He follows me over on X and maybe we'll reach out. He said the only two things that have made any sense to me at all. And he's obviously like a little bit cautious about going after people. He's more gentle than he needs to be about Dan and Kash at this point. But maybe when he gets over to DOJ, he'll know it. The saddest thing in the world is he said, push us. Do not give us any space to operate. Let us know that time is of the essence because the time is right now. It's almost over. We have until the midterms and it's over. What would Podcast Dan say to Dan Bongino, the deputy director? What would Campaign Kash say to Dash sitting there as the two of them get there and cover and say that we've got all the right people and we just need to push them out into the field from headquarters and sully up the water? They would probably say something the way like Ed Martin does. He seems like the only person that's actually willing to say the thing that's still true, that was true before he got the job and then after he's already got the job.
What were they so afraid of, Ed Martin, in your confirmation? Real quick?
Look, I'll tell you what they're afraid of. Same thing with Trump. They're afraid of people that aren't going to roll over for what they want, right? If you want a career in the law or you want a career in politics, don't do what I did, because you're going to find yourself opposed by your own party and you're going to be hemmed in on. No big law firm is going to want to hire you. But if you want to do what's right for the country, Donald Trump showed us the way. And I'll finish with this, Annie. I think this is the truth right now. It's now or never. It's now or never for this moment we have, where if you're going to be, this isn't a debate about who could be this or who could be that. This isn't a conversation about what the future. It's now or never for our country to keep going and being great and being awesome. And all of us that can have to get in there and understand the moment and go for it as best we can.
What were they so afraid of, Ed Martin, in your...
So there you go. It's now or never. That's the moment. It's time is of the essence. There's no other way around it. All right, that's basically the rant for the day. That's the take. For those of you who didn't want to sit down and watch 35 minutes without commentary, now you got most of it with commentary. If you're watching the show, make sure you give us a thumbs up over on Rumble, which Dan still makes money on and didn't sell his part of that. So he's still doing fine. Don't worry about Dan. He's going to still make money left and right. You can support us over on YouTube. It's youtube.com/@KyleSeraphin, @KyleSeraphin over on X. Either one of those is fine. You guys are seeing, this is the entire show. There's no producer. It's just this dude sitting behind a desk instead of carrying a badge and a gun like I wanted to. Locals, you can find me over at KyleSeraphin.com. You guys will always find the links to the show description of what we're doing. You'll be able to find all of our behind the scenes content. And lastly, on Spotify, you can find it KyleSeraphinShow.com. You guys can share it very easily if you want to send it to somebody and say, hey, listen to this. Doesn't cost them a penny to do that. Very easy to do. I appreciate you guys sitting through with this. I don't want to leave you without a palate cleanser. Maybe we could do something from like Tim Kennedy, talking about men of action, men of violence. Let's talk about why, if you are a person of extreme aggression, you have a better outcome and less likely to have to use it. By the way, this is not the definition for most people I met in the FBI. Most people are not prepared to do the thing that you thought. It's a small percentage, like the GOBs and the Steve Friends. The people who actually served in the military or law enforcement prior usually understood it. Instead, they hire a bunch of accountants and lawyers who are willing to say yes when they shouldn't. Here we go.
How come all the scary guys are the nice ones?
If you are intimately familiar with violence and you are capable of violence, the less you have to prove, the less amount of violence you have to do to ever be successful at anything. In law enforcement, the more trained and capable somebody is, the less amount of violence they ever have to do. My family will never know the amount of violence I've done to understand like how soft and gentle I am to them. My kids have never seen a harsh hand out of anger or out of fear or an ego position. If there's harshness, it's out of love and wanting them to be better people. Jordan Peterson talks extensively about a man being pushed to his absolute limits. He should be capable of doing violence. And he's a good person because he chooses to be kind. Like if you're not capable of hurting somebody and you don't hurt somebody, that doesn't mean you're good. It just means you're useless. But if I'm able to take your face off, but I choose to be kind and gracious and giving and selfless to you, now I'm good.
It's so true.
Pretty simple stuff. One of the things you guys will see over my shoulder is a reminder to myself of some of the things that I did that were a little bit difficult, like going through PJN doc, or going through combat control selection, or doing some of the other things like the Hell Weeks there. It reminds me that a lot of the danger has been turned down in my life because I got drowned every day for 100 days in a row. So what is it if somebody wants to hurt my feelings on social media? It's basically nothing. All right. People who have done hard things understand what it looks like. People who haven't and have talked about it a lot, maybe they find themselves overmatched by the situation. There's a reason why the suspendables are different than other people who have come forward and have not been crushed. I've had people go out and say, hey, look after each other. People's mental health suffers in this. It does, but we just get angry. We don't get self-reflexive where we just mope around and melt down and self-destruct. What we do is we maintain principles, and we continue to do that. I hope you guys will continue to do that. I hope you'll share the show. The only way that we keep growing over here. And thanks to all the sponsors that continue to keep support over here, whether or not we make people happy. We do appreciate all of you. God bless you. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. We'll have something else spicy and juicy. It's just the way it is. Thanks for watching Dash versus Kash and Dan. I'll see you again tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.